Imagine this. You open your eyes in the dead of night. You know you're awake, your mind is sharp, your heart is pounding, but your body refuses to move. Not a finger, not a breath you can control. And then, you feel it. The weight, heavy, suffocating. A shadow, darker than the darkness around it, standing at the edge of your bed, watching you. What would you do? Could you do anything at all? For millions around the world, this isn't just a scene from a horror movie, it's reality. Sleep paralysis. You're not dreaming. You're not hallucinating in the way we normally think of it. You're re-trapped in the liminal space between the comfort of sleep and the unforgiving light of wakefulness. Your eyes see the room. Your ears hear every creak of the floorboards. But your body is a prison. And the more you try to move, the heavier those chains feel. The phenomenon has been called many names across time. The night hag, the shadow man, the old woman, the demon on your chest. Every culture has its own name for it, its own version of the thing that comes to visit you when you cannot fight back. Some describe a hooded figure with no face, its form absorbing the moonlight instead of reflecting it. Others speak of pale, skeletal creatures crouched low, their cold, wet breath brushing against your cheek, and in the most chilling cases, victims feel the entity lean closer, pressing its weight against their chest until their vision fades. Scientists tell us sleep paralysis happens when the brain wakes before the body does. When your consciousness surges back online while your muscles are still locked in the natural paralysis of REM sleep. It's a glitch in the system, they say. Harmless, even. But here's the question. If it's just a glitch, why do so many people see the same thing? Why do the same figures appear to strangers countenance apart, across centuries, in stories that are eerily alike? Before we go deeper, have you ever experienced sleep paralysis? Have you seen the shadow? If you have, I want you to pause this video and tell your story in the comments. Don't be shy. You might find out you're not alone. And that's both comforting and terrifying. Tonight, we're stepping into a world where science and the supernatural collide, where the human mind becomes both witness and victim. You will hear true accounts from people who swear their VA faced something real in those frozen moments. You'll learn the folklore, the cultural explanations, and the theories, some grounded in neuroscience, others reaching far into the occult. And through it all, one question will haunt us. When you wake in the dark and find yourself unable to move, who or what is standing in the shadows? Stay with me, because in our next chapter, we'll explore exactly what sleep paralysis is, and why your brain might be lying to you, showing you a truth you were never meant to see. It's all in your head. That's what the medical textbooks tell us. Sleep paralysis, they say, is a simple misfire, timing error in the delicate machine of the human brain. When you dream during REM sleep, your body naturally shuts down muscle movement to keep you from acting out those dreams. But sometimes, your mind wakes up before the body does. Consciousness surges back online, but the locks are still on. That's when the panic starts. Imagine it like this. Your brainstem has two jobs during sleep. 1. To regulate breathing, heartbeat, and the basic life functions you don't think about. 2. To paralyze your skeletal muscles during REM. It's a protective feature like putting a car in park before stepping out. When that system glitches, you wake up inside your own body. But you're a passenger. You try to move your arm, it doesn't obey. You try to speak only. A strangled breath escapes. The part of your brain responsible for voluntary movement is screaming orders. But the spinal cord hasn't received clearance. You are locked inside yourself. Now here's where it gets strange. During this half-wakeful state, the brain can still be in a dreamlike mode. That means fragments of dreams, images, sounds, emotions can bleed directly into your waking perception. This is why someone lying in a quiet, dark bedroom might see a figure at the foot of their bed, or hear whispers right beside their ear. The mind is still producing dream imagery, but your eyes are open, your ears are working. It's like two channels playing at the same time, and one of them is tuned to a nightmare. There's another cruel twist. Fear makes it worse. The moment you realize you can't move, adrenaline floods your system. Your breathing feels heavier. You may feel pressure on your chest, not because something is sitting there, but because your body is in shallow breathing mode from REM. The fear amplifies the sensation, and your brain, desperate for an explanation, paints in the rest. And what does it paint? The intruder, the shadow, the presence. But here's the unsettling part. If it's just a brain glitch, Why do so many people report the same figures? Why the man in the hat? Why the faceless shadow? Why the withered old woman leaning over them, centuries apart, in places where cultures never crossed? Skeptics will tell you it's archetypes, universal symbols hardwired into our subconscious. Fear of the dark, fear of predators, fear of death. But believers will tell you something else, that the reason these entities are the same is because they are the same. The line between biology and belief has never been thinner. Science can tell us how it happens. It can measure brain waves, track breathing patterns, and even replicate sleep paralysis in a lab setting. But science has no explanation for what people are seeing or why those visions seem to exist outside the mind of the dreamer. Next, we'll step away from the white lab coat and into the shadows themselves. We'll hear the first-hand accounts from people who've been there, frozen, terrified, certain that they were not alone. It begins the same way for most people. You're sleeping, or maybe you've just woken up. The room is silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioner, the occasional creak of the house settling, and then something changes. Your breathing becomes shallow, your chest feels heavy, you realize you're awake, but you can't move. That's when you feel it, not just heaviness, but pressure, as if someone is kneeling on you, not hard enough to break you, but just enough to let you know you're helpless. Some describe it as a weight, like a sandbag. Others say it feels like two human hands pressing down on their sternum, squeezing the air from their lungs, one measured breath at a time. 26-year-old Melissa had experienced sleep paralysis before, but this night was different. I woke up and I knew instantly something was wrong, she recalls. My chest, it felt like someone was sitting on it. I couldn't breathe normally, like there was a knot inside my lungs. And then I saw her. Through the darkness, the outline of a woman's mole, hunched, with long tangled hair sat on her ribcage. Melissa could feel the woman's knees pressing into her sides. She could smell the stench of something old, damp, and rotten. She leaned forward, Melissa says, her voice shaking even years later, and whispered something into my ear. I couldn't understand the words, but I knew she was telling me that I didn't belong here. When Melissa finally broke free, the room was empty. But the smell lingered. In Toronto, a man named David describes his own encounter. I opened my eyes and immediately knew I was pinned down. It was like a car was parked on my chest. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears. And then, I saw the shadow. It was taller than the doorframe, completely black, with no features, no eyes, but a presence so cold that David could feel it radiating across the room. It walked slowly toward him, and as it reached the side of his bed, it leaned over, pressing both hands into his chest. I thought my ribs would snap. David says, I could hear my bones creak. I couldn't scream, I couldn't fight, and I swear, I could feel its fingers sliding between my ribs, like it was searching for something inside me. Not all encounters involve a visible entity. For some, like college student Natalie, the terror comes from the absence of a form. I couldn't see anything, but I knew something was there, she explains. The pressure wasn't like a person sitting, it was like the entire ceiling had fallen onto me. My vision blurred, my ears started ringing, and then I felt a pulse, like whatever it was, it had a heartbeat, and it was syncing with mine. Natalie's experience ended abruptly one moment. The pressure was unbearable. The next it was gone. But she says the phantom heartbeat stayed in her chest for hours afterward. Different countries, different ages, different lives. And yet, the descriptions align. A crushing weight on the chest, difficulty breathing, the sensation of being pinned. Folklore tells us this is the old Haga supernatural being who feeds off fear, sitting on her victim's chest until they suffocate. Science tells us it's simply the body's REM breathing mixed with panic. But in the dead of night, when your lungs burn and your vision fades, the difference doesn't matter. Next, we'll turn our gaze to the darkness itself, the faces, the shapes, and the eyes that seem to watch us from the corner of the room. Because for many victims, it's not just the weight they remember, it's the thing staring back at them. They appear in the moments between breath and scream. In the corner of the room, in the doorway, at the foot of your bed, silent, still, and watching. Some are tall and thin, others hunched and jagged. They have no mouths, no noses, no features, except for the eyes. Some swear the eyes are burning red, others a cold, luminous white. But no matter the color, The stare is always the same, predatory, unblinking, and ancient. From suburban bedrooms in America to bamboo huts in rural Asia, the description repeats. The same faceless silhouettes, the same oppressive feeling in the air, the same certainty. This thing is aware of you. And here's the strangest part: many of these people had never heard of shadow people before their encounter. Yet the details they give match accounts from across the world, spanning decades, even centuries. It was 3:17 a.m. when 17-year-old Chris awoke to find himself paralyzed. I couldn't move a muscle, he recalls, but my eyes were wide open. That's when I saw him. Standing in the far corner of his bedroom was a tall, thin man, dressed in a wide-brimmed hat and a long, flowing coat that seemed to melt into the shadows. Chris could not see a face, only the gleam of two bright, silver eyes. The man did not move, did not speak. He only watched. It was the longest minute of my life, Chris says. Every second felt like an hour. I couldn't tell if he was breathing, but I knew he was thinking. And whatever he was thinking, it wasn't good. When Chris finally broke free, the corner was empty, but the smell of burnt fabric lingered in the air. Not all shadow people stand still. Lena, a nurse from Ohio, woke one night to see something moving in the darkness near her closet. At first, she thought it was a pile of laundry shifting in the breeze. Then it unfolded, long limbs stretching, bending at angles no human body should. It crawled toward me on all fours, she says, but its elbows and knees bent the wrong way. Its head hung low, and even though it had no face, I could feel it grinning at me. When it reached the foot of her bed, Lena felt a sharp impact on her chest, yet nothing was touching her. The shadow dissolved upward, vanishing through the ceiling, as if it had been sucked into the night itself. Some encounters involve more than one figure. Miguel, a retired police officer from Texas, awoke to see two identical shadows standing in his bedroom doorway. They were thin, featureless, and perfectly still, their outlines shimmering as though lit from behind by an invisible light source. They didn't move, he says, didn't breathe, didn't blink. It was like they were waiting for something. Miguel tried to speak, to order them out, but no sound left his throat. Then, without warning, both shadows tilted their heads at the exact same angle, and the room dropped several degrees in temperature. When Miguel was able to move again, they were gone, but the doorway felt darker for weeks afterward. Skeptics will tell you these shapes are pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find faces and figures in patterns of light and dark. They might say your half-dreaming mind creates these forms as a way to explain the terror you feel. But believers, they'll tell you these aren't hallucinations at all. They're visitors, observers, predators, waiting for the right moment to step closer. Some even claim the shadow people are a type of interdimensional being feeding on fear, drawn to the helplessness of paralysis. Whatever they are, hallucination, archetype, or intruder, the effect is the same. Once you've seen them, you never forget the eyes in the dark. Next, we move into the world of sound because, for many, the terror of sleep paralysis isn't just what they see, it's what they hear. The whispers, the screams, the voices calling your name. For some, sleep paralysis is a visual nightmare, shadowy forms, glowing eyes, twisted bodies in the dark. But for others, the horror begins with sound. At first, it's faint, like the rustle of fabric in the corner of the room, the almost silent pad of footsteps on carpet. Then it grows louder, breathing, a whisper, words you can't quite make out, as if someone is speaking into your ear from inches away. And that's when you realize you are alone. Scientists tell us these sounds are a byproduct of the brain's half-waking state, a mix of dream audio bleeding into reality and the brain trying to make sense of the silence. But there's something different about these sounds, something personal. They don't feel random, they feel directed, as though the voice, the footsteps, the breathing is for you. Jessica, a graduate student from Boston, recalls her first auditory encounter vividly. I woke up and couldn't move, she says. At first, I heard this faint static, like a radio not quite tuned in. Then, through the static, someone whispered my name. Not shouted, not even spoken normally, just a slow, dragging Jessica. The voice repeated it, each time closer, until Jessica swore she could feel breath on her cheek. When the paralysis broke, her room was silent. But the next night, it happened again, and again, and again. For Tyler, an EMT in Arizona, the sound wasn't subtle. It was like I woke up in the middle of a war zone, he recalls. Screaming, Dozens of voices, men, women, children, crying, shouting, wailing in pain. It was so loud I thought my eardrums would burst. Pinned to his bed, Tyler tried to shut his eyes, to block it out, but the volume only rose. Then, all at once, silence, not a fade, just gone. For weeks afterward, Tyler swore he could still hear faint echoes of those screams. Whenever he tried to sleep, May, a young woman from Singapore, had an entirely different experience. The voice was speaking in a language I didn't know, she explains. It was a deep, rumbling sound, like it came from a cave. The words made no sense, but my body knew they were dangerous. I could feel my heart racing faster with every syllable. She says the voice seemed to move around her bed, first at the foot, then near her ear, then behind her headboard. It stopped only when she felt a cold hand brush her ankle, and then she woke fully, gasping. Cultures worldwide have their explanations for these sounds. In some Native American traditions, they are calling spirits, luring the soul away from the body. In Middle Eastern folklore, whispers and sleep paralysis are the work of the jinn, supernatural beings that tempt and terrify. In European witchcraft tales, screams and moans are the cries of those trapped between worlds, desperate to be freed. Whether it's a whisper that knows your name, a scream that rattles your bones, or a language no human tongue has ever spoken, the sound dimension of sleep paralysis can be just as horrifying, if not more than anything you'll ever see. Next, we'll explore one of the oldest, most enduring archetypes in the history of these encounters, the old hag. From Canada to Cambodia, this figure has haunted the dreams and waking nightmares of countless generations. She is one of the oldest visitors in human nightmares. Her shape may change, her face may blur, her voice may vanish into silence, but her presence, heavy, suffocating, unmistakable. They call her the old hag. For centuries, she has been described in whispered tales and written records, an ancient woman, often hunched and skeletal, who creeps into your room while you sleep. She sits on your chest, immobilizing you, feeding on your fear until the edges of your vision begin to fade, and then she leaves, without a sound, without an explanation. What makes the old hag so fascinating and so terrifying is her global consistency. In Newfoundland, Canada, she's a well-known figure in local legend. Hagging is still a term used there to describe waking up paralyzed with a crushing weight on your chest. In Scandinavia, she is called mare, a spirit that sits upon the chests of sleepers, giving us the root of the word nightmare. In Japan, there is kanashibari, literally bound in metal, where victims report an old woman figure pinning them down. In Brazil, the pisadeira, thin, old crone with long fingernails, stands on the chest of sleepers who've eaten too much before bed. In parts of Africa, she is the witch of the night, stealing breath and life force from those she visits. Different names, different clothes, the same effect. In 1989, a fisherman named Alan in Newfoundland experienced what he calls the most real thing that ever happened to me. I woke up to see her sitting there, he says, old, wrinkled, eyes like black pits. She was grinning at me, big, yellow teeth showing through her cracked lips. Alan says she leaned forward, her hair brushing his face, and whispered in a voice that sounded like dry leaves, "It's not your time." Yet, when he finally regained control of his body, the indentation of her knees remained in his bedsheets. Maria, a teacher from Portugal, had never heard of the old hag until she encountered her. She was on my chest, her knees digging into my ribs. I could smell her, like soil after a heavy rain, mixed with something rotten. Maria says the woman's skin looked like cracked clay, flaking as she breathed. Her hands were ice cold, her nails long enough to scrape against the bedsheets. When Maria woke fully, her chest was sore, and her breathing felt labored for hours. In Singapore, Wei describes his experience as pure silence. I woke up, and she was there. No movement, no sound, just staring at me with eyes that seemed too large for her face. Wei says the old hag didn't speak, didn't move, and didn't fade away. She simply blinked once and was gone, leaving behind an unbearable stillness in the room. Psychologists might argue she is a manifestation of the human brain under extreme stress, an archetype born from our primal fear of being attacked in our most vulnerable state. But here's the strange part. Accounts of the old hag predate modern psychology, modern medicine, and even widespread literacy. People with no way of communicating across oceans still describe the same woman, with the same withered hands, and the same malicious presence. Is she a nightmare, a shared cultural symbol, or something far more real, something that moves between worlds and finds us when we're weakest? In our next chapter, we'll examine an even stranger phenomenon, moments when sleep paralysis doesn't just happen to one person, but to several people at the same time, in the same place, encounters that blur the line between individual hallucination and shared reality. Sleep paralysis is supposed to be a solitary experience. It's your brain, your body, your mind caught between states. So how do we explain the cases where it happens to more than one person, at the exact same time, in the exact same place? In these stories, it's not just one person seeing the shadow, it's two. Not just one hearing the whispers, but everyone in the room. And if sleep paralysis is just a trick of the mind, how can minds in different bodies be tricked in the same way, at the same moment? In 2004, at a small university in Oregon, two roommates Emily and Sarah woke in the middle of the night, completely paralyzed. I opened my eyes and saw this tall, thin figure standing between our beds, Emily recalls. It had no face, but I swear it was looking at me. At the same time, Sarah was seeing it too. I could hear Emily's breathing change. She was panicking, but I couldn't move. The thing turned its head toward her, then toward me. Then, it just vanished. When both women regained movement, they screamed together. Their accounts matched in every detail, down to the way the figure's shoulders sloped forward and how the room had felt freezing cold. A family vacation in the mountains of Montana turned into a shared nightmare in the summer of 1997. John and his wife Rachel had fallen asleep in their rented cabin, with their two sons in the next room. Around 2:45 a.m., John awoke, unable to move, and saw a shadowy silhouette in the doorway. I thought it was a bear at first, he says, but it was shaped like a man, too tall, too thin. In the morning, Rachel quietly confessed she had been paralyzed that night, too, and had seen the same figure. Later, their oldest son admitted he had been awake as well, frozen in bed, watching the same shape from across the room. Perhaps the most unsettling comes from 2010, in a military barracks overseas. 3 soldiers, Brown, Ellis, and Harper, were sleeping in a single room. At 3:12 a.m., all 3 awoke simultaneously, locked in place. Brown recalls, I saw this dark figure crouching on Ellis's chest. It looked like it was breathing him in. Ellis saw the same thing but on Harper, and Harper, he claims the figure was right above him, its face inches from his own. When they regained movement, all 3 leaped out of bed at once. Their descriptions of the entity matched perfectly, right down to the way its fingers seemed to taper into sharp points. Skeptics suggest environmental triggers, carbon monoxide leaks, infrasonic frequencies, or even electromagnetic interference that could cause similar hallucinations in multiple people at once. But believers see these cases as evidence that sleep paralysis can be more than a personal nightmare, it can be a shared one. Some even theorize that these encounters are glimpses into another layer of reality, one we can only see when our minds are half awake, our defenses down, and our perception tuned to something beyond the ordinary. If multiple people can see the same thing at the same time, maybe these entities aren't in our heads at all. Maybe they're right here with us, always, just beyond the veil. In our next chapter, we'll explore a theory that flips the narrative completely, the idea that sleep paralysis isn't an attack at all, but an invitation, a gateway to leaving the body entirely. What if sleep paralysis isn't a prison? What if it's a doorway? For centuries, mystics, occult practitioners, and spiritual explorers have believed that the moments between sleep and wakefulness are the key to leaving the body entirely. And in their view, what we call sleep paralysis, isn't a malfunction, it's the first step in something far stranger, astral projection. The theory goes like this: your body is a vessel, your consciousness is the pilot. During certain states, deep meditation, lucid dreaming, or yes, sleep paralysis, the tether between the two loosens. If you know how to control it, you can separate from your physical form and travel the astral plane, a realm beyond space and time, where thought becomes reality and the laws of physics bend to your will. But if you don't control it, something else might. Practitioners of astral projection often describe a method called the rope technique, imagining yourself climbing out of your body as if pulling yourself up an invisible cord. But many warn of the Watchers, entities said to guard the threshold between worlds. Some say the shadow people are the Watchers. that they're not trying to harm you, but to keep you from slipping into a realm you're not ready to enter. Others believe they are predators, waiting for a traveler to wander too far from their body. A man named Daniel from Melbourne describes his first and last attempt at astral projection. I was stuck in sleep paralysis, but instead of panicking, I remembered reading that you should relax and try to roll out of your body, and it worked. I was floating above my bed, looking down at myself. At first, it was peaceful until he noticed something else in the room. In the corner was this tall, thin figure. No face, no movement, just watching me float. And then it moved toward my body. I panicked and slammed back into myself. I woke up instantly, drenched in sweat. In 1974, occult researcher Rosalind Kent claimed that during astral travel, she found herself in a long corridor lined with doors. Behind each door, she could hear voices, some calling her name, others whispering in languages she didn't recognize. But one voice, she said, was different. It was angry, and it was getting closer. I knew if I opened the wrong door, I wouldn't come back, she wrote in her journal. She never attempted astral projection again. In esoteric traditions, sleep paralysis is often seen as a vulnerable state. Your body is still, your spirit loosened. Without proper protection, prayers, charms, rituals, you could invite unwanted guests into your vessel. Some traditions even describe possession beginning this way. The victim is paralyzed, a foreign presence enters, and when they wake, they are different. Of course, mainstream science rejects astral travel entirely, chalking these experiences up to vivid hallucinations caused by the brain's attempt to reconcile mixed sensory inputs. But here's the question skeptics can't answer. Why do so many people, across cultures and centuries, describe the same landscapes, the same entities, and the same rules in a place that shouldn't exist? Whether you see it as a dream, a spiritual journey, or a dangerous invitation, one truth remains during sleep paralysis. You are somewhere between two worlds, and in that in-between, not everything you meet has your best interests at heart. Next, we'll meet the people who live with this phenomenon regularly, victims who have faced these encounters not once, but dozens, even hundreds of times, and some who have learned to fight back. For most people, sleep paralysis is a rare and terrifying fluke, one encounter, maybe two, in an entire lifetime. But for others, it's a regular visitor, night after night, week after week, a shadow that becomes a part of life. Living with sleep paralysis means living with a constant tension. Every bedtime becomes a gamble. Will tonight bring rest, or will tonight bring them? Some long-term sufferers develop insomnia, terrified to fall asleep. Others try to sleep sitting up, in a chair, or with the lights on, small, desperate acts to ward off what they know will come. Claire, a software engineer in Seattle, has had sleep paralysis since she was 14. It happens like clockwork once a month, always around 3 a.m. I'll wake up and see the same man, she says. He stands at the foot of my bed wearing a dark suit, no face, no features. He doesn't move, he doesn't speak, he just is. Over the years, Claire has learned not to fight. The more I panic, the longer it lasts. So now I just watch him. Sometimes I close my eyes, but I can still feel him there. And then, eventually, it stops. James, a 38-year-old from Texas, refuses to accept paralysis as defeat. At first, I was terrified. Every time it happened, I thought I was going to die. But then I read about people wiggling a finger or toe to break the state. I started training myself, small movements, tiny breaths, until I could snap out of it. Now, James says he's even turned the fear into control. I can't stop it from happening, but I can end it fast. And sometimes, I turn it into a lucid dream. I figure if my brain is going to trap me, I might as well make use of it. Marisol from Mexico City experiences sleep paralysis 2 to 3 times a week. She's learned to use it as a launch point for lucid dreaming and, sometimes, astral projection. It's still scary, she admits. The shadows still come. But I tell myself they can't hurt me. I focus on leaving my body, and once I do, they disappear. It's like they only exist if I'm trapped inside. Experts recommend a variety of approaches: sleep hygiene, keeping a consistent schedule, avoiding heavy meals before bed, and reducing stress; body awareness training, focusing on small muscle movements to regain control; grounding rituals, prayers, mantras, or even music before sleep for those who believe in a spiritual component. Community support, online forums where sufferers share stories, compare coping methods, and remind each other they're not alone. For those who live with it, sleep paralysis becomes more than an event, it's a relationship. Some see it as a curse, others, strangely, as a gift, because in the moments when you're frozen between worlds, you come face to face with the unknown. And once you've seen it, you can never go back to the way you saw the night before. In our final chapter, we'll pull everything together, the science, the folklore, the shared experiences, and the theories, and ask the question no one can answer with certainty. Are we alone in our rooms? Or is something always there, waiting for the moment we can't move? We began this journey in the darkness, paralyzed, breathless, staring at something in the shadows we couldn't explain. We've explored the science, the folklore, the shared experiences, and even the occult possibilities. And now, at the end, one truth remains. Sleep paralysis refuses to fit neatly into one box. Neuroscientists will tell you it's a glitch in REM sleep, a harmless misfire of consciousness. The visual and auditory terrors, hallucinations, the weight on your chest, a byproduct of shallow REM breathing. And maybe they're right. Maybe there's nothing lurking in your room at 3 a.m. Maybe the shadows are just tricks of a panicked brain. But if it's only in our heads, how do we explain the patterns? The same faceless man in the hat appearing to strangers countenance apart. The same bent old woman crouched on chests for hundreds of years, in dozens of languages and cultures. The same whispers, sometimes speaking names the victim has never told anyone. Folklore doesn't survive centuries without fuel. And the fuel here is fear shared across humanity. Then there's the possibility that sleep paralysis is more than a biological hiccup, that it's a threshold, that when you wake into that frozen half state, you're not alone because you're not entirely in your room anymore. You're standing at the door between worlds, and the things on the other side can see you just as clearly as you see them. Maybe they can't cross freely. Maybe they need us to be still, silent, and vulnerable before they step through. Mark, 42, from London. It happened once, 15 years ago, just once, but I remember it better than my own wedding day. The eyes, the cold, the certainty that if I ever saw it again, I wouldn't wake up. Aisha, 29, from Dubai. I thought it was my grandmother at first. She passed years ago. But then the figure leaned close, and I realized it was nothing I knew. It whispered my name, and I swear I heard it say, "See you soon, Luis." 34, from Argentina. People tell me it's not real, but I know it is. I saw its shadow leave the room. I saw the streetlight outside flicker when it passed. That wasn't in my head. Whether you believe in science, folklore, or the paranormal, the experience changes you. It leaves a mark. For some, it's a faint memory that fades with time. For others, it's a recurring presence, one that feels like it's waiting. So tonight, when you lie down and close your eyes, when your breathing slows and your muscles begin to lock into that deep, dreaming stillness, ask yourself, if you wake up and can't move, will the room be empty, or will something already be standing there, in the lingering shadow? If you had your own sleep paralysis encounter, whether it was last night or 20 years ago, tell your story in the comments below. Let's see just how many of us have been touched by this phenomenon. And if you want to step further into the unknown, subscribe, hit the bell, and join us next time. As we explore the corners of reality most people are too afraid to visit, because the night is only getting darker.